Prepare to experience the strongest radio allowable by law. Secrets will be revealed. Myths dispelled. From the studio gym where excuses never apply, it's Superhuman Radio with your host, Carl Lenore.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of Superhuman Radio. You know, the one thing that this pandemic has done is made a lot of people invest in home gym equipment. Most of us are restricted by some amount of space. We pick a room, maybe it's one side of our garage. We're going to start parking the car outside now. And we are confined to this space, and we're also confined to a budget. Let's be honest. And you want to buy equipment that's going to give you the best bang for your buck. And you don't want to waste money on equipment that you really don't need. Let's be honest. Well, the discussion has to be, what is the most efficient way to train to get the most gains out of your small home gym? And I really thought there was no one better to discuss this with than Doug Brignoli, because Doug has spent his career and his writing on showing people how to efficiently activate muscle to get the most gains with the least risk of injury. It's very important because let's face it, nobody wants to waste time. Nobody wants to be injured, and everybody wants to grow muscle and get stronger. Well, Doug knows how to do it. And we're going to talk about that in just a minute. And that's going to lead into what you really need to outfit a home gym so you could do a thorough bodybuilding type workout. You know, if you're a power lifter, we already know what you need. You need a bench, you need a squat rack, you need a lot of plates. But for those of us who aspire to be strong, be healthy, and look a certain way, that is really what we're focusing on today. Before we get started, of course, I have to thank my title sponsor, Legendary Foods, makers of the Tasty Pastry. If you haven't tried it yet, you're really missing out. If you go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use the code SHR10, you'll save 10% off your entire order. The Tasty Pastry originally started out as an alternative to a Pop-Tart. It's become so much more. The new cake-style Tasty Pastries are flaky. They're delicious. They have less than 1 gram of sugar. They have up to 20 grams of high-quality, high-leucine protein, generally under 5 grams, 5 grams or less of net carbs. They are the perfect snack if you want to feel like you're cheating, but you're really not. Again, shrnetwork.biz/legendary. SHR10 is the code. Now, if you want to try to win a box, we give away a couple boxes every day on the show. People are very happy to accept them. Listen during the commercial break for the secret word. And when you hear it, email it to me at onair@superhumanradio.net, and you are entered to win. Now let's bring my guest on, and that is Doug Brignoli. And let me get the artwork up here because I'm doing it all. How you doing, Doug? Welcome back to the show.
Carl, how are you?
Very good, very good. And we had a really nice offline discussion this morning in preparation for this show, and I think it's really fascinating. So I said to you recently that I read a study that said that using anything greater than 35% of your 1 rep max will help you build muscle and get stronger if you do the proper weight work using that weight. And we got into this long discussion. And one of the things that I got out of it that I want to put out there right now, first and foremost, is the idea that there is a 10-minute workout that is going to build muscle is a fallacy. Is that not true?
That's 100% true.
Right.
It's not only
so many people promote this on Facebook and Instagram, the 10-minute workout, build muscle, boom.
Well, look, you're going to get likes, right? I mean, everyone wants, to get a massive muscular physique with minimal time, right? And if someone can pique your interest and make you think that they have the way to do that, you're going to click, you're going to give them some dollars in their pocket for clicking. Maybe you're going to sign up for their program, but, false advertising is prolific, right? Everyone advertises, not everyone, but a lot of people advertise something that's too good to be true. And then, of course, a lot of people may not resubscribe or rebuy that bottle of vitamins or whatever it is that they bought. But you know what? Millions of people bought one.
Right. That's very true. So let's talk about muscle activation efficiency and the anatomical correctness of how a muscle was designed to be used through evolution, and then using that pathway to activate the muscle. Let's talk about that.
Okay. Well, the first thing is I want to touch on what you said about that study, about the 35%.
Yes.
So it is true that a weight that only is, let's say, 40% of your 1 rep max can build muscle, but not until you get to the point of failure. So if you're doing a set of 30 with a weight that's, let's say, 40% of your 1 rep max, the first 20 are doing nothing for building your muscle. Muscle grows by recruitment, and recruitment happens one of two ways. It happens with total fatigue, total failure, getting to the point where that muscle is really, really, really barely able to twitch, or it's able to be triggered with a heavier weight with a low rep set. So let's just say you're using a weight that is, let's say, 80% or 85% of your 1 rep max, and you're doing a set of 6. Well, the first rep is already recruiting. The second rep is recruiting. You don't even have to take that set to failure in order to get growth with that set. But on the high reps, low weight, you have to take it all the way to failure. So you can trigger muscle growth one of two ways, but that's only if you're talking about one set, right? What if you want more growth than one set will provide you? Then you need more sets. The question is, how many sets can you do like that versus how many sets can you do like that? So you can do a lot more sets. You do a lot more volume doing heavier weight, lower reps. Now, that doesn't mean only do heavyweight, low reps. In order to get there, you have to sort of prime it. You have to, I call it seducing the muscle. You have to get it to the point where you can get heavy and get the most out of the set and be stronger and reduce the risk of injury. So I typically start off with 30, then I'll go 20, then I'll go 15, 12, 10, 8, 6, 6, 6, 6, 6, 6. So I get a lot of volume in, but you can't do that many sets if you're just doing the high rep stuff.
Now, you said another word that I have become a huge believer. All these years later, I figured something out, that volume really is where muscle growth occurs. And that's the other reason why I can show you how to build muscle in 10 minutes a day is complete malarkey.
Yeah, you need time.
Because you can't do the volume required.
Right.
So
right. It's an unfortunate fact. I mean, if you want to build muscle, you got to spend a lot of time doing sets. And not only do you have to do a lot of sets, but you also have to do enough rest time between sets in order to not compromise that next set. So all of that adds up to, I'll be spending 45 minutes to an hour on one muscle group because I am motivated to do that, because that is my priority. But if someone says, look, I don't have that option. I've got 2 kids, I've got a wife, I've got 2 jobs, I've got golf with my buddies and, all these commitments. Okay, fine. Well, then just accept that you're not going to get maximum muscle growth, right? There's anyone who tries to tell you, I've got just the solution for you. if you train like this with your breakdown sets and your supersets and your this, high fatigue training fools us into thinking that that kind of intensity can be a trade-off for volume. It cannot. You cannot just do the math on that and say twice the intensity with half as many sets.
I want to stick with this for a second. I want to, because this is a nuance that I didn't get until this conversation today that you and I had before the show. So fatigue does not equal efficient activation of the muscle. In fact, it may actually be the opposite. So those of us who we do supersets and all these extravagant advanced force reps, and we go, man, I am spent. I can't even lift my arms. You may think your arms are going to grow from that, but they may not necessarily grow.
Yeah, it is an ironic thing. I mean, I've talked to a number of people who really, really do believe that if you don't do a set to failure, then it's a wasted set. And that's absolutely false. I mean, you can look up articles by Chris Beardsley. Actually, look up Chris Beardsley, Training to Failure, and you'll find the science behind why that can actually inhibit. So much fatigue will inhibit doing enough volume. So you're better off doing a little less intensity, a little less total exhaustion, and trade it off for more volume. So you're doing 95% effort every time you do a set, not 100%, 95% maximum effort, another set, another set, another set, another set. And your muscles will grow like weeds. It's just math.
It's fascinating. So last thing I want to touch on before we start talking about the home gym is the right way to activate a muscle. Talk about, some movements are a 2. Well, let's do this. So I've been doing a lot of dips lately, and my front delts are growing. And you said yes, but it's not really the best way. So go explain the
all right. Well, every exercise that you do has a biomechanical profile. So for the moment, let's just talk about compound movements like a squat or a chin up or a parallel bar dip or something like that, or a bent over barbell row. And you say, okay, well, I know what my target, let's just say a bent over barbell row. I know what my target muscle is. I want to work my back. And that's very ambiguous. Okay, so we got to be more specific than that. So they'll say, okay, I'm working my lats and I'm working my upper inner back. And I'll say, well, do you know what muscles those actually are, what they're called and what they do? No, I don't. Just those bumps in the upper back.
Right.
And I say, okay, well, so you're doing a bent over barbell row. The first thing I'll tell you is that the lats have a different function than the upper inner back, the primary muscle being the middle trapezius. They have 2 different functions. They have 2 different directions of anatomical motion. So you cannot do them both well with one movement. That's number 1. Number 2 is the muscle that is most loaded will not be determined by the movement you do. The muscle that is most loaded will be determined by the direction of the resistance. Whatever muscle is directly opposite the direction of the resistance, it's called the line of force, will be the muscle that is most loaded, whether that's your intention or not. Okay, so when you're doing a bent over barbell row, right now, I will tell you, and it's very logical, the muscle that is most loaded is your lower back. Yet you're not doing it for the lower back.
Right.
And that's because the lower back has to hold not only the weight of the barbell you're rowing, but of your torso and the length that it's magnifying the weight by.
Right.
So you could be getting twice as much load on the lower back than on your intended muscles. So what is the movement of bent over barbell row? Well, you're going like this. Okay, so your elbows are actually going behind your back. Well, guess what? All muscles pull toward their origin, right? So if you're talking about the middle trapezius or the lats, those originate on the spine. In other words, the movement has to move toward the spine, not back, toward the back of the room. Right? So the muscle that is working most with your motion is the rear deltoids. That's the only muscle that pulls the elbows to the back of the room.
That is astonishing.
The middle trapezius, the biggest muscle of the upper inner back, doesn't even connect to your arms. That means that any arm part of the bent over barbell rowing isn't being done by the upper inner back. It's being done by the scapula. So you need to get a scapular movement. That's what that muscle does. And the lats pull down and in from a lateral high to a medially low, right? That's what those lats. So a bent over barbell row doesn't resemble either of those two movements.
Right.
And load your lower back more. So that's why you say, look, if I want to not waste time, if I want to keep the workout short, then what you have to do is identify the best movement for each muscle group. And not because, look, someone could tell you, yeah, but a compound movement works 3 muscles at one time. Well, none well. Okay, so you're doing a bent over barbell row, you're loading your lower back isometrically. You're not working it dynamically with motion, right? So you're already getting a compromised benefit on the lower back, on the erector spinae. You're not doing what the lats actually do. You're not doing what the trapezius actually does, right? So both of them are getting maybe 20% benefit, 30% benefit, not much at all.
Right.
And now what? Now you're going to walk away with just 20% benefit?
Yeah.
I mean, if each one of those muscles got 100% benefit, now you're talking.
Right.
But that's not the case. So you're better off doing 3 exercises that give you 100% benefit for each. It takes a little longer to do 3 sets in one, but ask yourself, what do I prioritize more? Savings of time or progress?
And progress has to be king because no one goes to the gym to look exactly the same next year.
Exactly. If you're going to invest any time at all, it's like investing money. If you're going to invest money, you want the highest return on your investment. Why would you invest on something that gives you a low yield?
Right. Absolutely. And we'll put a link up to the book. For those of you who are intrigued by this portion of the discussion, the book is called The Physics of Resistance Exercise. We did a show about it.
Right.
And I'll put a link up to that, to the book in the middle of the interview. I have to go get it and I'll bring it up. But now I want to talk about starting with the premise that there are movements that are 8, 9s, and 10s. And based on that, there are certain body parts we all want to activate. How do we build a home gym around this science now? Because don't forget, I don't have a lot of money. I don't want to spend tens of thousands of dollars, and plus I don't have the room. I have a 700 square foot room. I can't get squat racks and all this other stuff.
Right. Well, the first thing I'll tell you is that when I was working out at the commercial gyms, when they were open before the lockdown, I was spending most of my time on the double adjustable cable machine. Not all my time, of course, because I had other options, right? I had a leg extension machine, I had a leg curl machine, I had a glute machine, I had a calf machine. And so I would use those other machines. But when the lockdown happened, my training partner and I decided we were just going to build a home gym in his garage. And he's an architect. And so his garage wasn't even for parking cars anyway. He had turned it into a back house. And so it was beautiful with lots of windows and painted and high ceilings and beautiful lights and everything. So we just converted that. And so what we did is we got a double adjustable pulley machine. We got an adjustable decline bench. And then we got a couple of seats, a seat with a backrest upright. Excuse me. And then we made a bench that is basically a high seat. And the reason for that is because we now do leg extensions on the cable machine. But in order to do a leg extension, you have to have a seat that's high enough so when your leg goes down, your foot doesn't hit the ground.
Right.
You have clearance.
Right.
So it has to be high enough for that, right? And then we actually created like a little bit of a back tilt to it, and we're going to put a little backrest on it, so it'll be even better. And actually, we're going to be designing home equipment because this is a fantastic solution to most people's problems, I think. But what we did is if it works best with a training partner, because he can hook on I have an ankle strap with a D-ring, and he connects me under the bench for my leg extensions. First one leg, then the other, one leg at a time, which is always better anyway.
Right.
And then when we're doing our leg curls, then we pull the seat back away from the bench. We raise the cables up, and then we put the D-ring in the front, and we do a seated leg curl. So we can do that. The only thing that we're missing, and we're getting it in about 4 weeks, we're getting a Tough Stuff brand multi-hip machine. That's the best way to work the glutes. You can do it by doing back lunges and things like that. But is
that the one that has the fulcrum in the middle? You put your knee over one side, and it's
got a cam in the center, and it's got a lever arm, right? You adjust the lever arm up, and so you put your femur over the top of that thing, and then you push it down, and you can do a fantastic full range of motion glute extension with continuous tension using one leg at a time, which is great because it eliminates this thing called bilateral deficit, which is a weakening of both sides when you do them both at the same time.
So there's a weakening
on your spine. Right?
Wait a second. Bilateral deficit. I've always assumed that training bilaterally made the dominant arm or leg do more work. But right. you're saying it's actually they both get weaker. You're saying.
No, let me explain. Well, this is a very tricky subject. So the first thing I'll start off by saying is that most people think that unilateral and bilateral mean unilateral as I'm using a barbell, bilateral as I'm doing 2 dumbbells.
Okay, I got them backwards, didn't I?
Okay. Or they say bilateral is 1 arm at a time, right? But here's the thing is that if you're using an instrument, a single instrument like a barbell, and you're calling that unilateral, but let's just say you have a pair of dumbbells, you're going to call simultaneous dumbbell curls unilateral, but alternating dumbbells, you're going to call that bilateral. Well, there's basically no difference there's more difference between the instrument and the independent dumbbells
right.
than there is between the simultaneous and the separate.
Right.
So in my book, I basically say, bilateral should be defined as independently loaded. Okay, so even if you're doing them simultaneously, it's still bilateral. It's not unilateral just because it's at the same time.
Right.
Bilateral should mean so you can do it bilaterally simultaneously, bilateral 1 arm at a time, or bilateral alternately.
Okay.
So now we're parsing words. Now what I want to get at is forget the barbell, because using a single instrument is never as good as using independently loaded limbs. Never. That's number 1. So now you've got independently loaded limbs, and now you're going to ask the question, should I do them simultaneously or should I do them alternately? And the answer is you should do them alternately. In fact, you can test this yourself. Take a pair of, let's say, 25-pound dumbbells or 30-pound dumbbells, which you find challenging, and then do them simultaneously and ask yourself, how challenging, how hard is this? Then do 1 arm at a time. Now notice I'm finishing 1 arm before I'm not crossing them in the middle. Okay, because that's basically the same thing as this. If they're both loaded at the same time, it triggers this thing called bilateral deficit, which is a weakening of both sides if both sides are being activated at the same time.
Is that a compensatory mechanism? The body is trying to protect its storage.
Well, by the way, if you look this up, if you Google this or do a search on this, you'll find that they still don't know the actual mechanism. They do know that it involves a central nervous system, and they do know that, and because it involves a central nervous system, what they're actually suggesting is that there's a reduction in the innervation.
Right.
Nerve conductivity to each side is lessened when they're both working at the same time.
And see, this makes perfect sense. This makes perfect sense to me. If you think of the electrical system of the body and the electrical grid of the body,
it can only do so much at a time.
Yes, you got so much
effort. Focus all of your energy on one side, and you focus you're going to be stronger on that side. And there's also a little bit having to do with mechanics. So let's just say that I'm going to do my right arm. I'm going to lean a little bit on that side. I'm going to lean a little bit on this side, and I can't lean to both sides simultaneously.
Right.
And if I don't lean, then it's as hard as if I try to do them like this without leaning. So there's a little bit of a mechanical thing, but and we're talking about, I think the numbers I saw were as much as 14%, 14.2% weakening of each side when you're trying to do them simultaneously. So whenever possible. And what I mean by whenever possible is sometimes it's not possible. If you're doing a flat dumbbell press and you try to do 1 arm at a time, you're going to fall toward the side. Right. So when doing 1 arm at a time creates a significant instability, then you end up getting a greater deficit with the instability than you would with the bilateral deficit.
Right.
So in that case, you're better off. Now, if I could do a 1 arm press and I could have this side somehow braced so that it didn't pull me over, if somebody held me to the bench, it might work, but doing it this way allows you to use more weight than you would have to use if you were doing 1 arm at a time. You'd have to bring it in closer, shorten the length of the lever, lighten the load, and get less load to the pecs.
So let's explain what a is it called a dual adjustable pulley machine?
Dual adjustable, double adjustable. You know, a Free Motion calls theirs the Cross Trainer, but that's just their brand name.
I'm going to put a picture of it up here. We all see these in the gym. I've never used it. Isn't this sad?
Right. Now, those are from my website. The one on the left is the commercial grade. The one on the right is the home grade. The 624, I got that backward. The 624 is the commercial. 424 is the residential. There's the difference between these two is mostly in just the thickness of the metal. The 624 is designed more to be used in a commercial setting by lots and lots and lots of people, and therefore more abuse.
Right. Its workload is designed to be used all day long.
Right. But the weight stacks are very similar. The residential model has a little bit less weight, like maybe 20 or 40 pounds less than the other. But the key here is that both of these pulleys can be brought narrower and wider as well as up and down. And that's very useful. That allows us to do, we have this group called the Brig 20, the 20 best exercises. And of the 20, 12 of them can be done on these machines.
Just for those of you watching, if you want to learn more about these two machines, you can go to Doug's website by getting there through this link, shrnetwork.biz/home gym. And home gym is all caps, one word. So you can learn more about that. So
this is one brand. We carry the Free Motion brand. There's other brands. There's Tough Stuff makes one. And you can just Google double adjustable pulley, and you'll come up with other ones. Now, for someone who says, look, I can't afford a machine like that, what do you suggest? I would say, well, look, the cheapest version of doing something like this is you can actually get online and look for a single adjustable pulley that is plate loaded. Okay, so that's got pegs, and you put the weights on there, and then you can adjust the height of the pulley. So if you get 4 of those, and you set them apart, like A and B is this distance, B and C is this distance, C and D is that distance. Then if you're doing a scapular retraction, you can do A and D. If you're doing the front deltoid, you can do B and C.
I see what you're saying, yeah.
So that way you're in it for I think each one of those pulleys cost like maybe $100. You can get for a $400 investment, but you have to anchor those to the wall, and you have to provide your own plates. That's one way of doing what we do on that machine, just by pulling a pin and moving the arms up and down.
And the you can pretty much train your entire body using these pulley systems, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, look, all we have is, as I said, an adjustable decline bench, a double adjustable pulley, a rack of dumbbells from 2.5 pounds to 60 pounds, and these 3 benches that I told you about, the one we use for cable crunches and things like that, the one we use for leg extensions, and we work the whole body. And so much so that I'm not going back to the commercial gym now, even though they've opened.
Wow.
We've just decided it's just not worth it. My quads even are as well developed now as they were when I was doing, things in the gym.
Leg presses. Yeah, because
I haven't done leg presses for a long time. Because they're just not comfortable, they're not efficient, and biomechanically they don't rate very high.
But the leg extension does, you said, right?
The leg extension machine is good, but it's, obviously if you bought a leg extension machine for your garage, it takes up a lot of room and you can only do one thing with it, right? Unless you get one of these that is a double purpose, it's hamstrings and quads, then it's better. But the fact is, I'm working my hamstrings and my quads perfectly well with just this cable machine and the seat we made.
And so you don't feel that you need a squat rack or a Smith machine? Those seem to be staples in home gyms.
Yeah, look, we do cable squats, which is a way of adding resistance.
You can do squats on that machine. We can
do cable squats. We call it the Brignoli squat. Or you can do cable sissy squats on that machine. And so there are ways to do squats without a squat rack, a power rack. And a power rack is designed for a barbell. We don't use a barbell for anything. Nothing. We use dumbbells and we use cables.
And, for those of you watching and don't know who Doug is, Doug has been competing for 40 years now, right? I mean, you're a competitive.
Yeah, I just retired November of 2019, winning the Mr. Universe a second time at the age of 59. I started competing at the age of 16. So, yeah, I've been doing it a long time.
Yeah. So, I mean, you can maintain a bodybuilder's physique following this approach. Yeah. Look at that bicep. That's nice. Very, very nice. I'm envious. Look, we have to take a break, but I want to put a couple things up. First of all, thank you to Natalie, who's is working in the background of the show. The book is available now. You can go to shrnetwork.biz/physics of resistance. And this is the new book, The Physics of Resistance Exercise, that explains a lot of these. Once they're explained to you, you go, oh my God, this makes so much sense. The right way to train each muscle that Doug lays out. And then, of course, you can go to his website at shrnetwork.biz/home gym. And that is home gym is all caps, to learn more about the dual cable crossover machines that he uses. But like he said, you can pretty much get these by different manufacturers or even makeshift some that you can put on the wall and they're plate loaded.
Right.
The bottom line is
the machines that we use, the machines that we sell, we mark up like nothing. We don't, our goal is not to make money on selling free motion machines. Our objective is just to help you do the Brig 20, to help you do the right exercises. And this machine is so much a part of what we do that it just makes sense for us to make it available. But you're going to get the best price from us for the free motion machines, but they're still not cheap. And so that's why I don't say buy them from us, buy them from us.
But you know what?
Shop for price. You do your homework. But the point is, you do need to use pulleys.
Okay, so you keep saying they're not cheap, but the prospect of outfitting a home gym today isn't cheap. If you're somebody who says, well, I want a squat rack, or I want a Smith machine, or I want a leg press machine, or I want this specialized piece of equipment that I use at my gym and I love, and I won't be satisfied with my home gym without it. I mean, these machines are $800, $1,000.
Look, I mean, we can do so much more with so much less space using what I just showed you there. Right. In fact, I think I sent you some pictures of the little gym we use.
We're going to put them up. We're going to put them up.
You can see what the garage gym looks like. It's very simple. And then the point is that if you have a squat rack, it takes a lot of room. And, you know, you have to trust me on this. If you read my book, you totally understand. But the point is that a squat rack, a power rack, will give you far less visible muscular development results than you'd get from what we've set up in our gym, in our home garage gym, without a squat rack, without a power rack, without a barbell. You don't need it. If the result is what you want in the smallest amount of space, that's a little garage gym right there.
Here's the pictures of the garage gym. Look how nice and clean it looks, too.
Yeah, I mean, white walls, lots of windows. That, in fact, the guy in the upper right-hand corner, that's whose house that is. That's Michael Racklin. And then the other guy is a client, a friend of mine. And so he's doing scapular retraction on the bottom right-hand corner. He's doing the decline dumbbell press on the left. But every body part, abs, lower back, obliques, biceps, triceps, traps, middle traps, upper traps, every body part can be fantastically worked with this little home gym you see here. The only thing we're adding, as I said earlier, was we're adding a multi-hip machine, because that is by far the best way to work the glutes. And we're getting it from Tough Stuff, and we've got a little space planned out for it. But that setup right there is all you need to get the maximum benefit. I'm not saying compromise benefit. It's like, oh God, you've got compromised space, so No, maximum benefit. You can get as much progress from that as you can from anywhere else, no matter how fully equipped and big the gym is.
We're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we have more. And also, if you want, you can post questions, and we'll work them into the discussion. We're talking with Doug Brignoli today about outfitting your home gym. Stay tuned. is to build muscle or burn fat. You'll find everything you need at Redcon One. Need help getting a good night's sleep? Try Fade Out, or the most popular pre-workout supplement on the market today, Total War. Sign up for their new Transformation Challenge and win $10,000. Or shop for apparel that people at the gym will know that you are serious about your training. Need a testosterone booster that works? Check out Boomstick. Whatever you need, you'll find the best quality supplements on the market at Redcon One. Go to redcon1.com. That's REDCON1.com, or go to superhumanradio.net and click the Redcon One banner ad today. As a listener of this show, you know how important your gut is to your overall health. Bioptimizers has a potent product to heal and repair your gut unlike anything else. It's called Leaky Gut Guardian. It's powered by patented IGY Max, an egg-based protein that enhances gut health, reverses antibiotic damage, and strengthens your immune system. Available in 2 delicious powders, vegetarian vanilla and chocolate carnivore. Simply mix it with your favorite beverage. Repair your gut and power up your immune system risk-free and save 10% off. Go to shrnetwork.biz/leaky gut. Don't delay. Fix your gut today. Repetition. TaylorMade Health is focused on making sure you're able to perform and look your best. They are a leader in game-changing supplements and cosmetic products. Whether you want to increase strength, expedite recovery, facilitate soft tissue repair, or reduce deep wrinkles, TaylorMade Health has you covered. TaylorMade Health is also the home to Dr. Seed's products such as BPC, BPC Plus, and the Chill Pill. All of my listeners can now get 20% off their first order with code TRY20. That's TRY20. This code can even be used on subscription orders. Visit shrnetwork.biz/try20 today and use code TRY20 for 20% off your first order. The power of light can be truly life-changing and an important element for every superhuman. Because of this, I want you to experience the power of award-winning Saluma light therapy. Saluma utilizes NASA research technology to improve health at the cellular level and is cleared by the FDA to effectively treat a variety of pain, muscle, and joint conditions, as well as facial wrinkles and acne. Our entire team here at Superhuman Radio uses it. Its innovative shape-taking design allows for easy placement anywhere on the body. Choose from 13 different models. For an exclusive listener discount, go to shrnetwork.biz/Saluma. That's CELLUMA, and use code SHR10 to save 10% off of one of these award-winning devices.
This is the Superhuman Channel. Evolution just got kicked up a notch.
As you can see, I have my new Calm eye covers on. That, along with this little antenna you put on your wrist and the app and my phone, allows me to get into a very, very deep, very, very restful state whenever I want. And I use it post-workout, after I have my post-workout meal, because we know that rest and digest is critical. I use it at night too, before bed. It puts me into a state that I fall asleep easier, and it works. If you're one of those people who complains that your brain is always working, you can't shut it off, this could help you. It's called NuCalm. And we're talking about building muscle, but you can't really talk about building muscle without talking about recovery. NuCalm has actually had 1 million sessions that show it improves sleep, reduces stress, and boosts recovery without drugs. So if you're searching for something that you can use to take you down, make you rest, make you focus, make it easier to fall asleep, make it easier for you to get in a calm, rested state, look no further than NuCalm. Take 2021 and make it the year that you achieve all of your fitness goals. We have a special link set up for our listeners. Go to SHRNuCalm, SHRNuCalm.com, and get 50% off a 30-day subscription of NuCalm and their money-back guarantee. That's SHRNuCalm, NuCalm.com, SHRNuCalm.com. Check it out. I love mine. And now we'll bring our guest back. I really like this thing. It helps me at night. There's some nights where I just I don't feel rested. My brain is still going. I want to go to sleep, but my body's saying no. I put the eye covers on. I run the app. You put the little disc. It's an antenna. And literally within a couple minutes, I feel relaxed. It's fantastic.
I got you. Try it.
Okay, so we have a couple. Let's see what questions we have here. So, well, the first one is a comment from Robert Thompson. He says, my local libraries have purchased copies of your book. 3 YMCA members have bought books and are getting great results. And I know that Robert Thompson has bought the book and he loves it. Jared SF, Doug, when did you first discover biomechanics? How did you find out about biomechanics? That's an interesting question.
It is a good question, actually. It didn't happen all at once. But I will say from the very first day I worked out, I was analyzing. The very first day I went to the YMCA, I was 14 years old, and I was doing upright rows, and I said, this doesn't feel right. I was doing parallel bar dips, and I went, this doesn't feel right. So I was already saying, this feels right. This one doesn't. Why doesn't this one feel like that one? What should it feel like? What should the goal be? What's the common denominator in all the good ones? What's the common denominator that's missing in all the bad ones? So that's how it started, right? And little by little, like for example, when I was doing, let's say, a side raise with a cable and the cable was at the ground level, it felt one way. And then when I raised it up so that it was at the height of my hips, it felt better. And so it was obvious that the direction of resistance matters. So the next obvious question is, well, one's got to be better, one's got to be worse. What would determine that? So then you dig a little deeper, and then I went to cadaver dissections, and I studied, and I read the university books, and I just became obsessed with mechanics, body mechanics, how it works, why it works, what's better than what and why, and discovered over the course of a number of years that most of this stuff was unknown to the bodybuilding community. You can find the research on at university levels. Bilateral deficit's always been around. You've never heard it talked about in bodybuilding settings, right? Other things like reciprocal innervation, that's been researched. Cross education, that's been researched. Active insufficiency, that's all, it's all there. But nobody talks about it, and yet these things have profound effects on what works better than what in a bodybuilding setting, and no one had done that. So what happened with me was that I never thought that I was going to go public with this, so to speak. I just, every time I learned something, I improved my workout. And pretty soon my workout started looking very unusual. And so I'd have friends coming up to me and saying, you know, why are you doing it like this? And why aren't you doing it like that? And so then I would explain it to them, and they would say, wow, that makes so much sense. You should write a book. And at the time, I just would poop with the idea. And, you know, ultimately I thought, well, I don't know if I'm going to write a book or not, but I am at least going to make a list. So basically what I did inadvertently was I created the table of contents, just making the list.
Right.
You know, opposite position loading, alignment, ideal direction of anatomical motion. I mean, these are all the things. Turns out now I've come up with 15 factors. I call them the Brignolian principles of biomechanics, but they're 15 factors. They're biomechanical. They're either anatomical, or they're physics related, or they're neurologically related. And these 15 factors could be a checklist for every single exercise. So that's the thing that people need to understand. If you're going to build an airplane, you're not going to be able to do it unless you buy the book called The Principles of Aviation. You have to know what those physics principles are that allows flight in the most ideal setting. Well, the same is true for resistance exercise. There are certain principles, there are certain factors that determine how good or not so good something is. So I'll give you one just simple example from a physics perspective. So if you're going to load a muscle, this is sort of abstract, but just sort of imagine this. If you're going to load a muscle with 90 pounds of resistance, you're not going to pick a 90-pound barbell to do it, or dumbbell or whatever. The point is that the muscle is lifting an amount of weight that is related to how much you've selected, but largely influenced by the length of the limb that's moving it and the angle of that limb relative to the direction of the resistance.
Right.
So what ends up happening is you end up getting a percentage, greater or lower, based on the physics, the mechanics of the exercise. So you could load a muscle with 90 pounds of resistance by using a 100-pound barbell with an efficiency ratio of 90%. So you're getting 90% of the 100. Or you can use a 300-pound weight and only get 30% on the muscle. It's still 90 pounds. So the muscle doesn't know or care how much you're actually lifting. It only cares how much it's getting, how much force it's required to produce. So if you're going to use a 300-pound barbell instead of a 100-pound barbell because your ego requires it, because you think wrongly that 300 pounds is automatically going to load your muscle more, you're wrong, and you're beating up your skeleton in the process, right? So a perfect example of this is the barbell squat. When you're doing a squat, your upper leg limb, your femur, is the operating lever of the gluteus, and the lower limb is the operating lever of the quadricep.
Right.
So we're going to look at both of these angles and determine percentages. Okay, so you know that a pendulum is in the neutral position when it's hanging vertically. And support beams and buildings are vertical for the same reason, because a vertical lever being parallel to gravity loads its muscles or other things zero. It's neutral, right? Once you move it away from that neutral position, it increases its percentage of load, getting to 100% when it's horizontal, which is the perpendicular position of gravity. So that means that a lever that's halfway between vertical and horizontal could be considered halfway, 50%, so 50% active. So when you're squatting, the lower leg doesn't even get to a 45-degree angle. It only goes forward about 30 degrees.
Right.
From the neutral position. That means when you're standing, your quadriceps are, you can hit somebody's quadricep when they're standing there, they're flaccid. There's no load on them at all. Once you descend, that lower leg only goes forward 30 degrees, which means you're only getting about 30% of the weight that's on your back, on your quad.
Yeah.
And you know, let's just say you're using a 100-pound barbell, you know that your quads can handle more weight, so you add more weight to the barbell, but adding more weight to the barbell compresses your spine more. So that's a really foolish way to add load to the quadricep, because you're still using an inefficient quadricep lever, right? A better way would be to somehow, like a sissy squat, let that lower leg get more horizontal. But so that's the quadricep. The gluteus, when you go down and your femur does get horizontal, parallel with the ground, you can say, well, that's a 100% lever, right? Well, that's correct. But the lower leg, since it's attached to the femur, and since the load on the glute is coming from the foot through the lower leg, that lower angle has to be factored in. And so that is undercutting the length of the femur. It's reducing its length. Effectively, it's reducing what's called the moment arm in physics. It's the moment arm, right? Same thing happens when you're doing a press like this. If you let it out, it gets heavier, right? If you bring it in, it's lighter, right? Because you're reducing the moment arm. So again, you're getting a 50% long lever on the femur, even though it's fully active, and you're only getting a 30% active lower leg lever. So both the glutes and the quads mechanically are getting less than they could get if they had better mechanics. But to make matters worse, I don't want to belabor this too much, but to make matters worse, there's a thing called reciprocal innervation, which means that muscles that work in opposite directions can't fire simultaneously. When you're doing your biceps, your triceps are relaxing. Central nervous system demands it. It forces a relaxation synapse to go to the tricep to not interfere with the biceps function. Okay, so what happens is when you're loading the glutes during squats, the glutes is a hip extensor. That means hip flexors are relaxing. Guess what? 1/4 of your quadricep is a hip flexor, the rectus femoris. So you're shutting off 25% of your quadricep when you're squatting, because you are trying to simultaneously activate two different sets of muscles, one of which opposes the other.
Right.
So you'd be better off doing leg extension. This is the reason why it's so foolish to think that all compound exercises are better than all isolation exercises. You'd get more benefit to the quadricep and more benefit to the glute if you did them separately.
Now, the naysayers out there will say, well, are there any pro bodybuilders, like IFBB monsters,
right,
use this type of an approach? Because, we always see Ronnie Coleman squatting. We always see these guys squatting,
No, look, here's where I have to make sure that people understand it, because this is taken out of context. I just said it, but I'm going to say it again, so it's very, very clear. Exercises that are compromised do not work. I never say squats don't build quads. I never say that. Squats build quads. But here's the thing is, you'll take someone like Ronnie Coleman, he'll do squats, he'll do leg presses, he'll do leg extensions, he'll do sissy squats. All of that.
Lunges. He does walking lunges.
Result, but he can't tell you which one contributed more or which one contributed less.
Right.
Right. So what you end up getting is a good result, but with a lot more work than you needed to do.
Interesting.
So here's the analogy that I typically use is, let's just say that I'm going to drive from here to that destination over there. And I'm going to drive on the only road I think exists. It happens to be very bumpy. It happens to be very muddy, rocky, wet. And I arrive at my destination. And there you are waiting for me at the destination. And you say, you're here. That must prove that the road you took was a good road. No, there was another road over there. It was dry and flat and clear. And it could have gotten there just as well without the wear and tear, without the abuse, without the wasted fuel from the spinning of the tires. And that's the analogy, is like, do you want to spend 3 times more effort and energy and wasted, and risk of injury, wasted time doing exercise that don't give you the most bang for the buck? Why not just do the ones that are the least abusive to the skeleton and give the muscle the most load?
And, I can't help but think that the squat, which, Arnold squatted, 315 for reps.
Right.
Now, these insane squats that bodybuilders are doing, I can't help think that it's putting muscle on in the trunk where they're getting wider and blockier as opposed to having that nice small waist.
Well, I don't think that's true. And again, I'm not saying this to encourage people to do barbell squats.
Right.
But, for me, this whole thing is a mechanical thing. You look at this thing mechanically and you say, when you're seeing somebody do a barbell squat, they have to lean their torso forward.
Right.
Right. And the reason they're doing that, again, physics, right? So if you were to draw a line from the heel of their body through vertical line through the center, right? And you look at somebody squatting and you see that when they squat, a certain amount of their body mass, their hips, shifts to one side of that vertical line. So if they're too upright, they're going to be too rear weighted and they're going to fall over.
Right.
So in order to not fall over, they have to shift an equal amount of body mass or weight to the front side of that vertical line. Right. So that it's balanced over the heels and you don't fall, right? Well, that forced forward leaning will load the erector spinae. It also contributes to the gluteus loading, but that's sort of another issue, which I'll talk about in just a moment. If you look at someone doing a barbell squat from the side, or maybe you photograph them when they're in the down position, in the descended position, and then you say, now, which of these 2 levers, the lower leg or the torso, is leaning farther toward the horizontal? What you'll see is it's always the torso that leans farther forward. It's never less. Unless you're doing a front squat, which is another story.
I'm just thinking of my own squat experience. I always, because I'm a tall guy, I have long bones in my legs. In fact, when I started to descend, as my butt started to move back, my torso just leaned right over.
It pretty much has to in order for you to keep your balance. So here's the thing: is if your spine was not multiple vertebrae, if it was just one solid bone, like your forearm, right? Or this is 2 bones actually, but when you're doing a skull crusher, there's no problem with this lever getting horizontal. There is a problem with your torso getting horizontal when it's loaded, because it would literally fold, it would literally collapse if it wasn't for the erector spinae. And the erector spinae are the 2 columns of muscle that run up alongside the spine. So if your spine collapsed, then the intervertebral discs would squeeze out toward the rear. Right? That's how people herniate a disc.
Right.
In order to prevent that from happening, you have to keep your back what they call the neutral position, or slightly arched.
Right.
But the power capacity of the glutes is far greater than the power capacity of the erector spinae. So what you end up seeing is that it's okay to keep good form. It's easy to keep good form before you get to your maximum lift. But people always push it to the point where they feel their glutes and quads are getting the most they can get. And then that's too much for the erector spinae. Right. So it starts to roll forward, and then you start to herniate discs. So in other words, another way of phrasing this is, if you want to protect your vertebrae, you have to underwhelm the glute. If you want to challenge the glutes, you were overwhelmed, the erector spinae, and risk spinal injury.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That's why it's so much better to load the glutes by themselves, like on a multi-hip machine, where you don't even have anything on your spine.
Right.
And you can load your glutes more mathematically. You can literally load them with a greater amount of resistance, one glute at a time, doing a multi-hip machine. It's not as impressive, right? People like the whole standing at the gym, the barbells bending, the plates.
Oh, yeah.
People are looking, people go to the gym to perform, right? And then they pat you on the back and they go, yeah, beast mode, dude, beast mode. It's like, okay, I can show you how mathematically you got less load on your quadriceps than this other exercise would have given you over here. But this wouldn't have attracted any attention.
That's what it is. Nobody's saying beast mode, right? Exactly. It's so true. Look, I'm the first to admit, I've admitted it for years, that my ego is probably the reason I injured myself when I did injure myself.
Yeah, we all think that lifting heavier is better, and we all, to some degree, are susceptible to our peer, response, our likes, especially in today's social media. Everyone wants likes, right? So I don't know if you saw that video of a guy he was on a like press. By the way, this guy was not a muscular guy. He was not well-known. He was just a kind of an average guy thinking that he was going to be in beast mode. And he put about 1,000 pounds on the leg press.
Oh, and his femur snapped.
And his knee snapped the other direction. It literally turned backward, right?
Yeah,
and
I remember that. Every time I think about that guy, I get a pain in my stomach.
And he was doing this for the purpose of Instagram likes.
Right.
That's why he was doing it, because he knew that he was going to get a lot of thumbs up because he's got 1,000 pounds. And never mind that he's only moving the thing like 2 inches, 3 inches, and never mind that the lower leg is almost parallel to the direction of resistance. So it's a very small percentage of the load that's actually going on the quadricep. So for so many reasons, mathematically, the leg press is a foolish exercise, and people select it because they can use a lot of weight. And by the way, let me rephrase that. When someone says, I use squats because I can use a lot of weight, I would say, no, you use squats because you must use a lot of weight in order to compensate for the mechanical inefficiency of the movement.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you have to do that? Why would you not exercise that forces you to use more weight than you could use over there with, like, for example, a sissy squat, a bodyweight sissy squat, where you can let your lower leg get almost horizontal to the ground, loads your quadriceps more than a 200-pound barbell squat.
Right. No,
because of the difference in the angle of the operating lever of the quadricep. But
we
everyone thinks, well, the name sissy squat doesn't help, right?
I know, that is true.
They should rephrase that. They should call it a different name. But
the intelligence squat. The intelligence squat.
Exactly.
Smart squat. Paul Murphy says, why not front squat?
Okay, here's the thing is, front squats do one thing good, and that is they allow you to load your erector spinae less, because they allow you to keep your torso slightly more upright, and so therefore you don't lean as far forward, so it becomes less active as a lever, but it doesn't work your quads any better, because if you look at the lower legs, during someone doing a front squat, you'll see that they're still mostly vertical. They're not mostly horizontal. They still don't even get to a 45-degree angle. So mechanically, it's still a very, very, very inefficient quadricep exercise.
Interesting. We're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, I have one question about the efficiency of using pulleys in general.
Okay.
And then I want you to just run through the list of the Brig 20. How's that sound?
Yep.
Okay. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with more Superhuman Radio. Are you ready to change the way you age? Of course you are. That's why you're here. Juvicel is a new first-of-its-kind dietary supplement that includes 10 key research-backed ingredients shown in studies to support lifespan. Things like resveratrol, fisetin, quercetin, pterostilbene, sulforaphane, turmeric, all in a single dose. You may have some of these ingredients already, but Juvicel is the first to combine them all into a single product to support your lifespan. It's vegan, non-GMO, and sustainable. Live better longer with Juvicel. Go to shrnetwork.biz/live better. Use code SHR and save 20% off today.
New Mass Pro Synthogen X2 just upped its own legendary game. To distance itself even further from the rest of the pack, Synthogen X2 now has double the key active ingredients. If you've ever wondered what steroid-like recovery feels like, Synthogen X2 delivers. See why others compare it favorably to powerful bodybuilding drugs at synthogen.com. Mass Pro Synthogen. When you train with it, you'll gain with it.
Do you remember those delicious toaster pastries you had when you were a kid? You know, the rectangular sugar-filled snacks? Well, guess what? Legendary Foods has just made low-carb toaster pastry. This is the first of its kind, and honestly, these things are amazing. They have 3 to 4 net carb, less than 1 gram of sugar, and 9 grams of protein. You can eat them right out of the wrapper or lightly toast them. The only question is, which flavor, strawberry or brown sugar cinnamon? They're available at eatlegendary.com and Amazon. Repetition. Getting a massage post-workout is a proven strategy to facilitate better recovery. Getting to a massage therapist can be difficult and expensive, especially in these times. The solution is the Meteor, a heated massage ball from Milestorm. Reduce pain and soreness and expedite recovery with the Meteor's research-backed vibration settings and therapeutic heat. It's convenient for travel and works on any body part. Go to shrnetwork.biz/Meteor and use code SHR15 for 15% off and free shipping if you buy 2 or more. Start recovering better today. Folks, I'm pleased to announce that Pure Nootropics is now carrying the antioxidant alpha-lipoic acid in its bioidentical natural form as R-Ala. R-Ala provides protection in many areas and has even been shown to promote weight loss. Check out the interview I did on episode 2608 back in October to learn more. Our friends at Pure Nootropics have been bringing you great products and deals since 2013, and they have another one with R-Ala. Go to shrnetwork.biz/pure and use code SHR30 for a whopping 30% off. Level up. Go Pure. Whether your goal is to build muscle or burn fat, you'll find everything you need at Redcon One. Need help getting a good night's sleep? Try Fade Out, or the most popular pre-workout supplement on the market today, Total War. Sign up for their new Transformation Challenge and win $10,000, or shop for apparel that people at the gym will know that you are serious about your training. Need a testosterone booster that works? Check out Boomstick. Whatever you need, you'll find the best quality supplements on the market at Redcon One. Go to redcon1.com. That's REDCON1.com, or go to superhumanradio.net and click the Redcon One banner ad today.
You're listening to the Superhuman Channel. Don't hate us because we feel good.
That was good.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
What were you saying?
Don't hate us because we feel good.
Yeah, I know, right? Those were made 16 years ago by Will Adams. Great guy. He made those back then. What is the Brig 20? Just give me the list.
20 are, and it's kind of a loose number. Brig 20 are the 20 best exercises, biomechanically best exercises for your entire body. So, and I'm gonna call these off. I'm not gonna go by number so right. You can keep track yourself. So the best pectoral exercise is a decline dumbbell press. Alternately, you can do a decline angle cable press. Mm-hmm. Right? So again, your pecs don't know whether you're upright or lying down. They just know the direction of resistance. So if you get on a slight incline bench and the cables are pulling from behind, you can create that same cables, but from an upright position. Now, keep in mind that that all muscles pull toward their origin, right? So when you say, I want to work my pecs, that indirectly means that you need to bring the insertion of the pecs, which is the arms, towards the majority of pectoral fibers, which is in the middle of your sternum, right? Well, your shoulders are higher than the middle of your sternum. So moving in that direction automatically moves you in a slight decline direction. So here's why an incline is wrong, is because if I do a flat press, I'm already moving to the highest part of my pecs. If I go like this,
it's your shoulder.
I don't have any pectoral origins on my chin or on my nose.
Right.
And that's where the insertion of the pectoral is headed if you're doing an incline angle. So do the pecs work at all? Yes, they work a little. They're contributing, but you're not. Look, let's put it this way. If you were a man standing on a guy's sternum, on the highest part of his sternum, where the highest pectoral fibers are and those muscle fibers were ropes. So you're holding a rope and you're connected to that thing. And you're going to try to pull this bone toward you, but it's not going toward you.
Right.
You're going to have more luck if you're pulling that limb toward you. Right? This is true for every muscle in the body. So that's one of the first things we look at is the insertion of the muscle moving directly toward the majority of that target muscle's origins or not. Right? So decline movement happens to be the best angle for the pecs.
Okay.
For the lats, it's one arm pull-in. For the middle trapezius, it's scapular retraction, which are best done with cables. They can be done with elastic bands, but it's cumbersome because you have to figure out a way to attach the elastic band to the wall over there, to the wall over there, and you have to, and then elastic bands increase the resistance as they get longer. Cables don't. So it's not quite the same, but it's better than nothing. And then that's chest and back. For the deltoids, it's a lateral movement, right? It's not an overhead press. The best way to do it is with some angle that is mostly horizontal. So either a flat horizontal on your side or a slight incline, as I showed you there. We had a very slight, like 20-degree incline. You do your side dumbbell lateral like that. You can use cables on a side raise when the cable is right at the same height as your hand when it starts. But the problem is some of these cable machines, the lightest weight isn't light enough.
Interesting.
And then the increments are too big. So dumbbells, you could start off with a 2.5, go 5, 5.5, 7.5, 10. You can use a more accommodating weight when you're using dumbbells. For rear deltoids, it's the cable. This is the movement for rear deltoids. You know, when we do, traditionally, we've always done rear deltoids like this.
Right.
But again, the only thing that has to happen is the insertion of the muscle has to move toward the origin. Well, the origin of the rear deltoid is on the upper edge of the scapula, and it comes down at an angle and ties in right here. So if you bring that insertion toward the origin, it creates a diagonal line of movement, right? The idea that you're going to put your arms up like this doesn't make that mechanics any better. In fact, it makes it less precise, less ideal. So if you start with a cable and you go in a downward angle like this, by the way, when you're doing a low pulley rowing exercise, you're getting more rear deltoids than you are lats or upper back. So ironically, the only difference between that exercise and the one we do is that we actually cause the resistance for this arm to come from slightly that side, and the resistance for this arm to come from slightly that side. That's why you cross the cable. So that gives you.
It's almost like a skier. It's like a cross-country skier. You know,
yeah. I mean, remember I told you that what determines which muscle is most loaded is the direction of resistance. Well, since the resistance is going to go over here, it's got to come from the opposite angle, which is over there.
Right.
Right. So that's rear deltoids. For front deltoids, this is going to be the movement. So you can do that on a flat bench where you do a flat press, elbows in, so they're right alongside your body. Why? Because you're bringing the insertion toward the origin.
Yeah.
Right.
And
so
you rotate the arm, so that's easier to achieve.
You want to palm up, so your elbows are pointing down. Right. Now, if you do this, your elbow goes out, and now you're not exposing the front deltoid. You want the front deltoid to be on top. If you rotate the arm, the side deltoid comes on top.
Right.
You want to get that side deltoid out of the line of force, and you want the front deltoid to be in the line of force, and you want it to be early phase loaded because muscles are stronger in the beginning and weaker toward the latter part of the range of motion. So if you're standing up and you're doing this, you got nothing in the beginning where you're stronger, and you get too much at the end where you're weaker.
Right.
So if you're on your back, you start off with the most and you end with the least. And you can do that movement on a flat bench. You can do it on a slight decline, which is my preference. Or you can do it on the cable machine with a, you have an upright seat, and you can do the same thing with cables that are set slightly behind you. So that's the front deltoid movement. For triceps, we do either a decline dumbbell skull crusher or a modified cable extension, which is where the cables are coming from behind you. So you got one cable in one hand, one cable in the other hand. And again, what you want is that cable to cross your forearm early in the range of motion. That's what's wrong with, not wrong, but less good about a standard tricep push down is that the resistance is coming from there. So the cable and your forearm are almost parallel to each other in the beginning. Right? Well, that's where you're stronger. That's when you need more resistance, not less. So you don't end up getting the most resistance until you're 3/4 of the way through the range of motion. But if you have the resistance coming from behind you, then you start off with the most and you end up with the least. And what's more important is that your shoulder is in the most anatomically natural, safe position. There's no reason to make your shoulders do this because your tricep is working the same, whether it's like this or whether it's like this.
Right.
And, we can get into a long discussion about the long head of the tricep and blah, blah, blah. It's nonsense. Nonsense. You're not going to get better long head development of the triceps by doing overhead exercises, right? So the tricep muscle, the three heads of the tricep, cross the single tendon elbow and do one function, right? Elbow extension. That's what they do. So you might as well do that with the most natural anatomical position and motion with the ideal direction of resistance. For biceps, similarly, the arm should be close to the side of the body. There's no reason why you should be doing an overhead curl or a preacher curl or anything like that. Keep your arms close to the side of your body. You can do an alternate dumbbell curl, either hammer grip or palm up grip, or an alternate standing cable curl using that double adjustable cable machine. So those are our bicep exercises. Then for our quads, we do cable leg extensions and cable sissy squats. For hamstrings, we do cable leg curls. For glutes, we're going to be doing our multi-hip machine once it arrives. In the meantime, we're just doing back lunges where you step back, and it's that front leg glute that is getting the work.
Right.
Okay exercise, not great. And then for calves, we do standing calf raises. We've got, a step that we use, put our heels off of it so you get a full stretch. We do 20 reps a set, but, for years we all thought we had to use like the weight stack on the standing calf machine, but you really don't. You can get very good calf development. And the problem people have a lot of times is they use the entire stack or they use a lot of weight, too much weight, and then they do a little itty bitty partial range of motion.
Yeah, right.
You're going to get far more development. It's not even in a comparison, using much less weight, but full range of motion, full extension, full contraction. And that's the better way to go. You can add a weighted vest if you like. And then for abs, we do seated cable crunch. So we have an upright bench with a cable coming from behind. And we do the seated cable crunch. You could also do what would be considered an incline bench crunch, where your head is higher than your feet. You bend your knees up, and then you can get the incline reduces the resistance from flat. So it gives you a better resistance curve. And then we do cable obliques. We do cable torso rotation. And we do an exercise for the lower back that is called spinal extension. What we do is we put our tailbone against the wall, and your feet are off from the wall a little bit, and basically you just, so your torso is angling at about a 45-degree angle.
And you've got the pulleys over your shoulders, you're saying, right?
No, you don't need any weight for that.
Nothing.
Torso weight. Listen, believe me, this is the difference between dynamic exercise and isometric exercise. When people do quote unquote lower back, they do that lower back extension, right? But basically there's no movement in the spine at all. They're bending at the hip. So the dynamic contraction is happening in the glutes, and dynamic is always better than isometric, but the erector spinae aren't elongating or contracting as I was doing when I was actually moving my spine. You want those muscles to elongate and you want them to contract. And when you engage your erector spinae dynamically like that, you'll discover that torso weight, or maybe just holding a 10-pound plate or a 15-pound plate by itself, is more than enough.
Really?
To get those, to get that fatigue and to get that muscle working. So, when you do a lower back extension, there's no way that you can load your glutes enough. Even though dynamic work is being done by the glutes, you can't use enough weight to really get the glutes as well as they could be gotten. And yet you're not moving your erector spinae at all. Now, if you were to do that exercise with your hip joint frozen, no movement at all, hold that still, and then bend your spine, that's a good erector spinae exercise.
Right.
But it's more uncomfortable and costs more energy than just putting your tailbone against the wall.
Right. Very interesting. So pulleys strike me as being a much more adaptive, intuitive, and efficient machine than, say, free weights. In many instances where the weight is moving at the end of a lever, and so gravity is having a varying or dynamic force, as opposed to the weight stack. The gravity is always straight up and down, even though the lever is moving in different directions.
Well, no, that's actually wrong. The lever that you're talking about is the lever of that's the limb.
Yeah.
Right. So if I'm doing a cable press and the resistance coming from behind me, once the resistance is going through my lever, I'm also getting the diminishment of resistance. So it works the same way. The advantage of cables is that you can determine which way the resistance pulls. Gravity pulls only down.
Gotcha.
Right? Then you have to put your body into the position that makes down resistance beneficial. So that's why when you do, let's say, a pec curl exercise, that's why you have to lie on a flat bench or on a decline bench, because you have no choice but to work with what you're given, which is this downward vertical direction of resistance. You have to adjust your body to it. Right? But when you're using cables, you can choose the direction of resistance. That's why an exercise that is like this with cables is the same angle of resistance to the pecs as far as they're concerned as the one with free weight. Now, here's the difference too. If you're using, let's say, dumbbells, then again, that direction of resistance is straight down only, right? Which means that when I get to the top, that resistance is going to go through my arms and it's not going to load my pecs at all.
Right.
If I use pulleys, I can make those cables go a little wider, which means that now
even at the top, they're still pulling. Yeah, they're still pulling.
You're going to get a little less resistance out here and a little bit more resistance out here because it's still pulling me out.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So you can change the resistance curve with pulleys, and you cannot change the resistance curve that easily with gravity unless you change your body position.
Right. Fascinating. All right, let's plug.
I'll explain in my book. It gets complicated when you don't have visuals in front of you. But in my book, I have 900 images, 900, and with arrows, and I explain very clearly in layman's terms, by the way, what the direction of the resistance is and why this is better than that, and when it's dangerous and when it's not dangerous, and why it's dangerous. And there's a few pictures I show in there of muscles rupturing because people were not, aware of the physics.
So if you go to shrnetwork.biz/physics of resistance, you can get the book. You need the book. Everybody needs the book. I mean, so there's a great quote here by Dr. Stanley Morey. He's a physiologist. He says, when I first heard of Doug's book, I thought it would be a useless dissertation by a person with few credentials. Well, let me tell you, I was wrong. His book has stretched my brain cells, taught me many new things about exercise. I wish this book had been available in my younger years. It would have improved my training methods. There's a guy who's a scientist in this area.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then the other thing, I'm sorry?
He's fairly good friends with Richard Baldwin. We all know Richard Baldwin. And he just sent him an email saying that he thinks I should be given an honorary doctorate for this book.
I think that's true. And then if you want to take a look at the dual cable crossover equipment that Doug offers on his website, the link is shrnetwork.biz/home gym. And the home gym is all caps, HOMEGYM. And he was gracious enough to say, there's other ways to achieve this. I don't think that the machines are expensive when you consider.
Well, when you amortize it.
Well, when you consider all the equipment you're not buying.
Right.
You're buying, I have power block dumbbells.
Yeah. And
a lot of people go, my God, they're so expensive. Yeah, but they go from 5 to 50 pounds.
If you want to compare a full set of dumbbells from 5 to 50 pounds, it'd be more.
And the space it would take up and everything else. And it's like, well, it's all a matter of.
The thing is, if you can do 12 exercises with one machine and you compare that to buying 12 machines, there's no comparison, right? So not only are you doing a lot more with less cost and less space, but also, as you said, you think of the savings of what you're not having to buy. Yeah. And think about the fact that with this machine, you can do exercise that will save your joints. What's that worth?
We bought a new home and we're outfitting our gym, and I'm actually going to get one of these machines for the gym. And I am going to take your advice and get the one that hits the hip. And they have them at my gym. I've never used it. I'm going to get those. I already have a very comprehensive set of dumbbells and kettlebells. I have a trap bar. I'm going to get some more plates because I do like the trap bar deadlift just as an overall kind of strength test, if nothing else. But you're laughing.
Yeah, I am laughing. I'm sorry. Deadlift is one of the worst exercises you can do. It is because, look, again, if we just look at the physics of it and you say, okay, well, what is the lever that's getting most horizontal? It is, in fact, your torso.
Right.
Right. So you say, okay, so what is moving the torso? Well, partly it's the glutes and partly it's the erector spinae. So you say, again, as I said earlier, if you want to maximally work the glutes, then you jeopardize your spine because there's no way your erector spinae can hold as much weight as your glutes need.
Right.
Right. So you're getting a really risky exercise, or you're getting an exercise that doesn't produce as much benefit as another exercise that doesn't require any spinal involvement at all.
Yeah.
So it's very compromised. Look, I'm not saying that a person should never do deadlifts. In fact, I think that maybe doing a 100-pound barbell, occasional, bent knee deadlift is a very practical thing to do because, you're not going to grow any muscle with that because you're not challenging anything to the capacity that you could with other better exercises. But it's something that, it's a motion that you use on a somewhat regular basis. So it wouldn't be a bad idea to be accustomed to doing it with some resistance. But I would never expect to get any kind of muscular development from a deadlift.
No, I agree. For me, it's more of a test of strength than anything else. It really is. We have one last question. Paul Murphy. When using cable exercises such as the cable squat, I'm assuming you're working high rep ranges to achieve sufficient stimulation. Probably a different topic. No, explain it.
Well, first of all, you can use more than enough weight on cables. I mean, literally, I could put you on a cable machine and I challenge you to max it out. So the assumption that you have to use high reps because there's limited weight on the weight stack, that's completely false.
Well, let me clarify something. That machine has 240 pounds per stack, which means combined, that's just short of 500
there's
pounds.
Plenty of weight on those machines. But more importantly is that people have to quit with the idea that the value of their workout can be assessed by how much weight they lifted. What they should be using instead is say, this is how much load I got on each muscle, on these muscles, with this little amount of weight. In other words, if you maximize the physics, if you use the smartest physics, you can increase the percentage of magnification that the target muscle gets so much that, like on a sissy squat, for example, that you will have a hard time doing 20 reps with just body weight because you've maximized the efficiency of the physics.
Right.
So it's wrong to try to go for the heavier weight. What's smart is to go for the efficiency, the smart loading, not the inefficient loading that lets you use more weight but doesn't load the muscle anymore and stresses the skeleton even more.
And again, I repeat, there's 240 pounds per stack, which means combined they're almost 500 pounds.
Yeah, that's plenty.
So, I mean, that's plenty of weight to.
Look, I work out very hard. I work out, to the point where when I do an exercise, sometimes always, I try to get to the point where I cannot do more than 6 reps per set, sometimes no more than 4 reps per set.
Right.
And even still, I can't use the entire weight set.
Right. So there you go. I think we plugged everything we need to plug. The book is great. I actually have a dog-eared copy in my car now.
By the way, do you know I also have an online certification program?
No, I did not. Talk about it.
So if you're a trainer and you want to be Brignoli certified, you can go to Smart Training 365, and we have videos that show you how to set up the machines. We have an online course with exams that give you a certificate. We have, a bunch of we have the True Bodybuilding video that explains how to work on your tanning, how to work on your diet, where to get your posing trunks, how to do your posing routine, how to, taper to the, get your body fat down. So we have a lot of videos on Smart Training 365 that will not only help you with your own training, but if you want to be a better trainer to other people, it'll help you do that as well.
Doug, thanks for being here today, brother.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Hopefully,
you're a great host.
Oh, thank you for saying that.
You asked the right questions.
I'm actually interested. I'm outfitting a home gym.
That's why.
This interview is very selfish. I did this interview for me because I said, Lisa, I'm going to have Doug on the show because we want to buy a bunch of equipment for this gym. I don't want to waste the money on useless equipment. I want to see
when you're interested in the subject, you naturally ask the right questions, the smart questions.
Yeah. All right, Doug, we'll see you soon again. Okay, brother?
Thank you so much. Talk to you later. Bye, guys.
Take care. All right, we're going to take our leave, and we have a great show tomorrow. You know what? I don't even know what it is. Elisa told me this morning. We have a really, really good show for you tomorrow. Hopefully, let me see something here. I broke my phone. I shattered my screen, so my camera doesn't work, and I can't get it to recognize my face anymore. So tomorrow, thank you, Natalie. Natalie just texted me. Intuitive fasting with Dr. William Cole. Fasting is all the rage today. He's written a book to show people how to do it right. Apparently, it's a lot more difficult than I thought it was. I'm fasted today. Maybe I have to read the book. All right, we'll see you tomorrow with more Superhuman Radio. Thank you for being here today. And please share the show. Share the show. Always share the show.